When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Skims or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and great marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling and for shoppers buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. It's home of Shop Pay, the #1 checkout in the world. You can use it to boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through to checkout. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/income.
Hi everyone, I'm Deb Flashenberg. Welcome to Yoga, Birth, Babies, a podcast produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. We will be diving into everything prenatal yoga, birth, and baby related, hoping to inspire, educate, and empower you through your journey into motherhood. Thank you for listening.
Hi, I'm Deb Flashenberg, and I'm your host of Yoga, Birth, Babies. And today we're going to talk about work, pregnancy, and boundaries, new rules for modern parents. The idea for this episode was from the students. I hear a lot of students in prenatal talking about setting up mat leave, what that's going to look like during pregnancy to set up the boundaries and expectations for leaving work. But then also in postnatal, a lot of fear, anxiety, trepidation about going back to work. One of the big things I'm hearing students say is they're excited, many are excited to go back to work, but how are they going to take these two worlds, this new role as a parent, and fit it into their work role? And how is work going to accept their new role as a parent? So to have this conversation, I welcome back Lauren Smith Brody. She helps answer questions like how expectant parents can set healthy boundaries at work, building realistic support systems for the transition into parenthood, and how workplaces can truly support pregnant and postpartum employees. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Lauren, because once I tell you her bio, you're going to know why she was the perfect person for this conversation. So Lauren Smith Brody is the CEO of the Fifth Trimester Consulting and the author of the Fifth Trimester. Lauren's worked with companies across tech, finance, and law to support working parents and advance women's leadership. And her work has been featured in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and Good Morning America. She is a former executive editor at Glamour. And Lauren's also a journalist, researcher, and advocate, and co-founder of the Chamber of Mothers and advising federal agencies on family policy. She knows her stuff, and she gives such amazing practical tips and support for how to set boundaries so that if you are a working parent, you can still thrive and enjoy that career without having it take away from your role as a parent, and how to take that guilt away and how to take the fear away from asking for what you need. I love what she has to say. I think it's going to feel incredibly empowering. Again, I love practical, so I think you're going to get a lot out of this conversation. Now, before we jump into my conversation with Lauren, I just want to give some updates about what's happening at Prenatal Yoga Center. As always, I want to direct you to our website, prenatalyogacenter.com. That is going to have our most up-to-date schedule for our online and in-person classes, for our workshops and our on-demand classes, for our teacher training, for the latest blogs, the latest free videos. It's all there on the website. So take a peek over there. And also while you're there, subscribe for our newsletter, because each week we put out a newsletter with some tips and fun videos and pictures of our community. So you can check that out. And then I also want to take a moment to thank you, because people really do listen and act on this, that this podcast, besides it being a place for me to geek out and be able to talk to some amazing experts, it's for you. And what I've really appreciated is that the community has reached out with ideas. Sometimes it's looking at a topic I've already done and just asking me to look at a different perspective. That can be fun. And then sometimes you have ideas for guests, and that's really wonderful to hear things that you want and then be able to give it back to you on the podcast. So keep that going. You can always reach me at deb@prenatalyogacenter.com. I will listen to your suggestion and I'll do my best to bring it forward. I also now want to ask you for a favor. Please leave a rating and review. It helps people find the podcast and just builds our listenership and our community. All right. I think that is enough for me. We're going to take a super quick break, and when we come back, please enjoy my conversation with Lauren.
It's time to throw your lash curler away. Seriously, Lancome's new Curl Goddess Mascara keeps your lashes curled and volumized. From the pre-game to the after party, this fast-setting curl and volume mascara gives you up to 30 hours of wear with no way down. You know what? Curls really do have more fun. Shop Lancome Curl Goddess Mascara now on Amazon.
Hi, Lauren. How are you?
Hi, Deb. I'm great. It's so nice to talk to you again after all these years.
I know. I don't actually remember when your first episode was, but I will make sure it's in the show notes. But it was impactful. And as you and I were talking about before we started recording, some of this, some of the situations about balancing that fifth trimester are the same, but some things have changed. So I'm so excited for your time and to kind of dig in again. So thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm thrilled to be here.
All right. So let's jump in for those that didn't hear the first podcast, and then also maybe that don't know you. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and what inspired your work to focus on the fifth trimester?
Sure. So I'm a mom of two. I live in New York City. My kids are now teenagers. They were both born, though, when I was in what I now call my 1.0 career, which was as a women's magazine editor. And this was very much in the heyday of the kind of like girl boss era, where if you just really, really, really tried hard enough and kept trying and fell over, you would get promoted. And so that was the kind of early career tactic I took. And then I had my babies, and suddenly I couldn't stay at work until 2 a.m. every night. And I couldn't be the one who measured my value in how hard I worked and how frequently I got promoted and how many hours I spent, kind of chained to my desk, in spite of the fact that I actually loved my work. What I found is that coming back from my first maternity leave after my older son, Will, I was good at my job, but I was brand spanking new at being a working mom. And it just really threw me on my butt. It was so much harder than I had anticipated. I had postpartum anxiety during my maternity leave that was just kind of starting to get better as I was going back to work. And there had been so much preparation, like a whole bookshelf of books about like potty training and sleep training and, all the things that you have to do for baby. And there was nothing to help me with the major identity shift of becoming a new working mom. And I was doing it from a position of quite a lot of privilege. I was an executive at that point. Didn't mean really I was totally the boss of my own day, but, I wasn't so worried about getting fired. I had a really supportive spouse. I was making a good income. I was the primary earner, so there was sort of some pressure there too at that point, but also none of the kind of guilt-infused decision of will I go back to work, won't I go back to work, because my husband was in medical school, and so I was supporting us, and yes, I was definitely going to be going back to my paid work. Got back to work and found that, yes, it was really hard, but also that it required a level of vulnerability that I had never actually embraced before at work that really counterintuitively made me a better manager. So I was really open and honest about the fact that I hadn't slept the night before and I needed a minute longer to think about a decision. Or I kept my breast pump out on my desk, and the members of our team who were, junior to me and maybe weren't parents yet would go like, wow, what's that? Tell me about that. Like, you don't make it look easy, but that's actually a good thing because nobody else is being as honest about the fact that this is hard and yet you're still showing up and doing it. And it was a real eureka moment for me to realize that part of the way my job would transform is not necessarily at getting better at the things I already knew how to do well, but becoming a more open, thoughtful manager. And that was how I was going to grow. And so file that thought away. I had read Harvey Karp's book, The Happiest Baby on the Block. He's now probably better known as the guy who invented the SNU. And he's a pediatrician, and he had popularized back then the idea of there being a fourth trimester, which I didn't know about until I had a newborn baby who was fussy and who indeed responded well to being shushed and swaddled, and that feeling of recreating the womb, because human babies are born a trimester earlier developmentally than other mammals. That's the whole fourth trimester theory. It worked. And then I thought, yeah, but wait a minute, it's over at 12 weeks. And that's exactly when I'm going back to my job. And I thought, well, there needs to be a fifth trimester too, only this one's for me. This one's for the working mom going back to my paid work. And so that was the genesis of the idea. I struggled really openly and found that it made me, I think, a better leader, better manager, better teammate. And ultimately, a few years later, had my second son. And a couple years after that, was laid off. The industry was very much contracting at that point, and decided to take a minute and do some research and see what other people's fifth trimesters had been like, and if there was an idea there. And indeed there was. And that became my book, which includes the stories of and lessons of 732 other new working moms from as many backgrounds as I could find, different family structures, different definitions of ambition, different kinds of work, part-time, hourly, desk work, to see what we had in common working for us and against us, and what had very often felt like an individual problem to be solved to those 732 individual people turned out actually to be largely systems that weren't in place to support us properly, but working together, vulnerably, openly, we could each as individuals come back to our teams and our employers and make things a little bit better. So
I love that you did that. I love that you have acknowledge the fifth trimester, because I hear my students there come to postnatal, and then there's a lot of emotion, trepidation, anxiety around returning to work. And that's why I'm like, have you read Lauren's book? Because I think you're putting forth what so many are thinking, and you're giving some guidance. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I mean, I'm a language person. Like since I was in kindergarten, I've been always wanted to be a writer, and got to do that, and an editor. And I just think that there's real community to be found in knowing what to call a phase and finding camaraderie in that. It just, some of the best compliments that I've gotten are just essentially people saying thank you for seeing that this thing is real, that it is a transition, that it's finite. And now I know that I'm in it and I'm part of it. And that solidarity can just make a really lonely experience of new working motherhood actually feel like we can make a difference and some progress together.
So let's talk a little bit about the book itself. So when you look back at the fifth trimester now from when you first published it, what parts of the conversation around work and parenthood do you feel like have genuinely evolved? But then where do you still see the same patterns playing out over and over? Why has this not changed?
Right. It's funny. My little sister just had her first baby. And so this is such a good test case, because there are some things that you just aren't necessarily aware of until you're in it yourself for the first time. And I don't blame anyone for that. It's not for lack of, trying to find all the information you can. If anything, there's almost too much information right now to sift through. Public policy, for the political moment that we are in, which is so fraught and so hard to bring a child into, certainly. Even with all that said, there have been great strides made and lots of incremental progress. Since I published the book, the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act was passed. The Pump Act was passed. And I'm lucky to live in New York City, which was sort of a test case for both of those things, for some specific employment law, for paid family and medical leave, which New York State was one of the earlier states to adopt that. And so we've sort of gotten to see in and demonstrate, to the rest of the country, like some of this stuff is really possible and actually makes really, really good economic sense. So that is all progress, but then like less literally, like thinking a little bit more figuratively. So there's even things that I've just changed in the language that I use. Certainly, we are all now really familiar with the idea that all mothers work, whether you're working for pay or not working for pay, like all mothers work. That was not even a phrase that people used when I wrote this book. Mm-hmm. And the subtitle, it's funny. So the hardback came out in 2017 and the paperback came out in 2018. And I think it's actually quite significant that we decided, my editor and I, to slightly tweak the subtitle just in what had happened in that year, from The Working Mom's Guide to Style, Sanity, and Big Success After Baby, to drop the word big.
Like, just success. Just like getting out of bed, brushing your teeth, putting clothes on.
Who gets to say, like, who's measuring your success? You should get to measure your own success. You should get to decide what is satisfying, to have a more expansive and inclusive definition of what ambition is anyway. Mm. And I think that feeling was very much true in every single page and every word of the book the first time around. But that's kind of what's mostly shifted, I think, in my own work and my own thinking. Because I now go into companies and I consult. I help them do a better job of supporting and retaining these new moms in this moment, but also new dads, also caregivers, elder caregivers. And that's another big shift, is that I really learned that every single thing we learned about what brand new moms need going back to their paid work after baby really, really could be extracted and applied to the 70% of the American workforce who are caregivers. And we know that women take on the lion's share of that caregiving. It's very, very well documented, but it does include a lot of dads who want to do a lot more. And women are living we're all living in quite a sexist time. There's been this mass exodus of women from the workforce in the last year. But what I've learned is that men are also subjected to some of that sexism too, in the ways that they feel like they have to hide their identity as fathers. And so I have really tried to, in helping the moms, like help the moms help the dads, help the dads help the moms. So I've become, I think, a little bit more hopefully inclusive of what care work looks like and how it wires us up to be great parents, but also contribute to our economy in a bigger way. I've learned to make the business case as well as the moral case.
I like that you brought up about the parental leave, because I feel like for years, I've been in this business. I've been like working with perinatal folks for almost 25 years. And wow. I know it's a little bonkers, but I have seen a shift where the father figure or father person did not have leave. And it is nice to see some change in that.
Well, I think that public policy really dictates social norms. And sometimes it's the other way. Sometimes what society wants then gets voted into law. And I think it can happen simultaneously both ways. But with the dads, New York State's paid family leave and California's paid family leave and New Jersey's and Connecticut's they're all predicated upon FMLA, which is the 12 weeks of unpaid job protected leave. So like they're the way that they're paid for is set up a little bit differently in each of these states, but they are all from the get-go meant to be very inclusive of all genders, of all kinds of caregivers. And so I think that's what has become normalized. And we can definitely talk about how FMLA is not sufficient. And, these plans are like peanuts compared to what the support new parents have in the rest of the world. But that at a baseline, like that has been normalized. I think the numbers show that dads still tend to not take as many leaves, as many weeks of leave as moms do, but that gap is closing. And I've loved seeing that.
Yeah, I agree. I want to talk a little bit, you mentioned kind of the structural way that we now have weeks for people to take, time after baby. So I want to talk a little bit more kind of that frame of return to work period. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of people internalize this transition that they've done something wrong if they're having a hard time handling it.
Yeah.
But yet, as you allude to, it's more, not even allude, you clearly say it's a structural issue. There's no alluding. You are saying it. So why do you think so many parents are internalizing this as they're doing something wrong when it's the structure?
So again, I think it really does come down to public policy. And I hate to be like a history wonk, but this is such an eye-opening story whenever I tell anyone. So FMLA, which is the federally protected unpaid 12-week leave, which is still only accessible to like a little bit more than half of workers because of all the stipulations around who can take it and who can't take it. And certainly if you're a gig worker, like you don't have access, all of that. Anyway, when it was first proposed, when it was passed into law, that was 1993. It was actually the first bill that Bill Clinton signed into law. And it had been proposed at that point for 9 years running. And when it was first proposed in 1984, that's 93 minus 9 is 84, right? In 1984, it was originally meant to be 6 months of paid leave.
Really? I had no idea. Okay.
Because even back then, there was research. This is now more than 30 years ago. There was research that even back then that showed that 6 months of paid family leave, maternity leave, is the minimum to be protective of mom's mental health, mom's physical health, baby's physical health, dad or partner's bond with the baby, mom's ability to maintain her career, and mom's ability to maintain her income. All those things we've known for all these years are best protected by 6 months of paid leave. So fast forward to 1993, it was meant to be a placeholder. It was meant to be we'll improve upon this next year or in 2 years. And we never did. And so then it's become incumbent upon the states to sort of compete with each other and do better, better and better to serve their constituents. But we've totally normalized as the public this idea of, did you get your whole 12 weeks? And if you did, you should just be grateful. 12 weeks is a completely arbitrary amount of time for baby's development, for your recovery from birth, for your bond with the baby. It means nothing. It was just a random number. And so what I see all the time is people coming back to their paid work after getting their generous policy of 12 paid weeks, or maybe they got 8 paid and 4 they were able to cobble together a vacation, and it doesn't feel good, and they think something's wrong with them. And it's not true at all. I don't fault anyone who enjoys coming back to work sooner if that's good for them and it works for them. But the human body and brain are meant to need much more time than that, and to have that time be paid for in a way that doesn't exacerbate, financial stress.
Yeah, the sleep deprivation that can happen in those first several months, and then. I'm lucky I came back to teaching yoga and with a very supportive community. I couldn't imagine if I had a job, not that my job doesn't require my brain, but like something that was super detail oriented. Yeah. I think that would be really hard.
Well, we all have, for you, I'm thinking of, oh my goodness, I can't imagine having a job that required me to be strong in my body, at 12 weeks. And there's just different variations on that theme for different jobs. I was working with somebody earlier today who's about to go back to her work as a psychologist. And what she's facing is she's going to be taking care of people all day long, and then she's going to come home and take care of people.
That I do get, because as a teacher, I'm taking care of, that's my job to create the experience and support them. We're going to take a break, and we're going to come back. We're going to talk about something that I admit I'm not so good at. We're going to talk about setting boundaries. Not my strength. So let's see where that goes. All right, we'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Listening to this podcast? Smart move. Being financially savvy? Smart move. Another smart move? Having State Farm help you create a competitive price when you choose to bundle home and auto. Bundling, just another way to save with the Personal Price Plan. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
Whether your business has 6 floors or 6 employees, Walmart Business has everything you need to save time, money, and hassle. You can restock your break room with bulk ordering or bulk up your ordering team with shared payments. And you can get it all delivered straight to your business's door, whether that's on Wall Street or Main Street. Walmart Business. It's the Walmart you love, now for your business. Learn more at business.walmart.com.
Okay, we are back. All right, let's talk about setting boundaries. So pregnancy, I feel like, is often treated as kind of an inconvenience for some folks in the workplace. They're like, someone's going on maternity leave, but it's not really respected as a significant life transition. So what boundaries do you wish more expectant parents felt empowered to set before they go on leave, and kind of like to say, this is my life. I'm so sorry. I'm taking time, but I need you to respect this.
First of all, don't apologize. That's one boundary. Some boundaries I think you can set within yourself. So much of whenever I'm helping someone negotiate anything, especially a boundary, it's you kind of have to over-research it and over-inform yourself and convince yourself before you can expect to confidently convince anyone else. Speaking specifically about what happens before you have the baby, the boundaries. So assuming that you're having a pregnancy, or even, my adoptive families that I work with, the term sometimes they'll use is paper pregnant, and you don't always know how long that paper pregnancy is going to last. But there is a ramp up, right? And so anything you can do during that time to start practicing setting boundaries and asking for help. And this is going to sound like the most asinine thing anyone has ever said on your podcast, Deb, but I think it really works. Okay. If you are someone who never asks for help, start by asking someone, your sister, your partner, your spouse, whatever, ask for a glass of water. Be sitting on a couch and say, can you bring me a glass of water, please? It is like the first time you do it, it actually feels revolutionary. It's a muscle. Like you actually have to practice asking for things that you need. And then you have to start convincing yourself about why the things that you need are why you're worthy of them, why you matter enough to have that glass of water, but also how it fuels you to go on and continue. So getting away from the water thing, which is, sorry, I've overdone it on the water thing, but if you're asking for some accommodation or it's flexibility, especially something that no one else around you has had, think of it as an investment in your ability to keep going. So your whole goal here is not to burn out, is, to be able to still be in your job, doing what you want to do, being productive and contributing in this way a year from now. And so whatever you're asking for is probably like in that timeline is actually not that big of a deal. It's not going to cost that much. Anyway, sorry, I got a little bit off track, but going back to like what you can do when you're expecting, when you're pregnant, you can use some of that ramp up time to get used to what it feels like to ask for what you need and to start looking really critically at what are my job's deliverables. So I hate to be so kind of, cavalier and tactical about it, but you have a job description if you're employed. Because if you were to disappear in a puff of smoke tomorrow and they had to post your job and hire somebody for it, they would know what those 5 bullets are. So ask yourself, what are those 5? What are the 5 things on that list? What are my deliverables? What is my job? A lot of people have a hard time actually thinking of what it is because they're over delivering and they're already doing so many other things. A lot of women will hang on to the job tasks from the job they had 18 months ago that they've gotten promoted out of, but that stuff's kind of like secondhand and why train somebody into it? And so you end up over delivering. So pregnancy is a wonderful time to look really critically at what is it that I am supposed to do to fulfill my job, and then figure out what pieces you're over delivering on that you can potentially, especially kind of the lower level stuff, that you can train other people into. Because what you want to do is you want to come back to a job after your leave that feels really right-sized, that isn't over-delivering. Because you want to save your over-delivery for yourself, for your family. You want to just right-size your job. And this is where it gets a little tricky. But if you can also set yourself up to save a little bit of what I call white space, when you come back, you're going to want time and space to continue to grow in your job if that's your desire. You may not want to. That's totally fine. Like everybody can define ambition however they want. That sounds good to me. But if you need and want to make more money, if you need and want to feel recognized and, get a promotion or something, you're going to need time and space to do some business development, to do some networking. And what pregnancy can do is it can let you have a little bit of like an offload of some of that stuff, the task you're over delivering on, to save up room so that when you get back, what you're coming back to is a job that is much more manageable and also has a little bit of that white space that you can fit into your calendar.
Oh, I love that answer. And then I'm also wondering, is before someone goes on mat leave, is that the time they should also set expectations like, hey, if they choose to breastfeed,
yeah,
I'm going to need time and space and a place, not the bathroom, to pump. And therefore there needs to be, this built into my day. And I guess that also kind of leads me into boundaries of setting boundaries about not feeling they're going to be penalized or it's going to cost them anything. If they're like, I'm setting these boundaries, I can work these hours. I need this time to feed, so meetings can't be back to back. What are your thoughts on someone that's nervous about setting those kind of boundaries? It's going to cost them credibility or opportunity.
So that's actually something else you can practice, is having some of those conversations. I think what a lot of people find is the person who's sort of, opposite the desk from them or opposite the Zoom from them is really nervous to talk to you about your breasts. So,
okay, fair enough. They're like, where does this go to HR? Like, where? Yeah, okay, I can see that.
So if you bring up something like, I'm going to have this physical need, like you're actually doing them a service, because especially in this day and age, people are so afraid of messing that stuff up that they err so far in the other direction that they just don't even ask. And what you're doing by introducing that need, I would actually say, I anticipate that I am going to be, pumping breast milk, and I don't really know how it's going to go for me, but at a minimum, here's what I'm imagining I'll need. And I feel so good that I can come to you. First of all, it's legally protected, but like I can come to you with this need, knowing that like there will be others, I'm sure. And I'm really committed to finding mutually beneficial solutions to these things along the way. Can I come to you when there's something else that comes up like that? And they're going to say yes. And you have like, then when you have to come back to them 5 months later and be like, oh my God, I have like terrible recurrent mastitis. I can't commute. Like you're basically proving yourself right. You're like, remember that conversation where I said there's going to be something? Here it is, like.
But what about also kind of the credibility or opportunity if someone's job technically ends at 5 or 6, and we know our culture is a little bit of a hustle culture, and they're setting the boundary of like, no, I'm leaving at 5. How do you help reframe that fear that I'm going to miss out on growth?
Some of it is about not hiding it. I think that there is a very understandable temptation to be that person who like leaves their light on, or like on Slack, leaves themselves available even when they're not. And unfortunately, what that does is it actually sets up people to think of you as being unreliable when you're then not able to respond to their message quickly. Or they walk in your office and they're like, wait a second, crickets here. Like, what's going on? So you're better off getting ahead of it. And instead, like back to that job description, you're better off saying like, and you can try anything on. Pretend you're like, it is a business world, right? Pretend you're piloting this. Like I'm beta testing what it would be like to leave here at 5. So tell people it's what you're doing. And I realize not everyone has agency to just do it. But if you can set up a plan that lets you have a backup, so if there were a true emergency, somebody's hair is on fire, like they will call you on the phone and these 2 people know to do that, it's much easier to then not be on email while you're trying to, bathe your 4-month-old baby. So set yourself up predictably, reliably to be able to go dark is what I call it. And actually call it out immediately and think of it as a strength. You have your stuff together enough that you're someone who can actually take that time that they need and set that boundary.
Oh, that I really like that. I like that going dark. I need to actually embrace that for when I'm not available, because I think I make myself too available. So from your perspective, what do workplaces still misunderstand most about pregnancy, postpartum recovery, and the long haul of early parenthood?
Mm-hmm. I mean, the ever increasing cost and stress of childcare. And it is,
yes.
it's reported that, it's depending on what surveying you're looking at, that childcare costs are up 52%. I think what gets underreported is just that, like, even if you can afford it, there's, the availability of seats is quite low. I think that the latest stat I read is that there are 15 million kids in America who need an early childcare seat, and only 11 million actual spots. So that math doesn't math. And the piece that really doesn't get reported, because I don't know that anybody's ever measured it, is the labor that goes into actually finding and keeping and communicating with and feeling safe in that childcare. And what I see more even now than when I reported my book, and this was true when I was reporting it too, is that people will cobble together, if you have a 2-income home, with 2 working parents, that somebody will work a 4-day week and somebody will work a 4-day week. That covers 2 days of childcare. Then you've got grandparent care 1 day, and then you've got 2 days of like an in-home daycare. So fantastic, but like, the Jenga or Tetris of that is like a lot of mental labor. And when one thing goes wrong, it can upset the other 4 things that you've lined up. So that part of it is, I think employers don't have a lot of vision on, because parents don't want to say, I've actually got, so his mom comes on Wednesday afternoon and my dad comes on Tuesday. You just don't want to have to like say all of that, but that's a huge part of the labor that goes into it, because it's so expensive and hard to find reliable care.
Oh, that is so, so true. I remember the day we paid our last preschool payment. I was celebrating. And then I sat down and added up how much we paid for 2 preschools. And I'm like, preschools. Yeah. It was, I'm not even good at the figure, but my jaw dropped. I'm like, oh my God, we paid for preschool. Like, it could have been a college tuition. So there are a lot of parents that think, okay, I'm just going to figure out support as I go. And just kind of like you said, we're going to do 4 days here, 4 days here. What does realistic support actually look like? So if you have someone listening right now that's in that idea, I'm going to cobble it together. How would you want them to really look at realistic support? And also, why is it hard to plan?
It's funny. I do some individual coaching, and I was like pitching a corporate client, and they were like, tell me how that works. Do you have a basic format? And I was like, oh gosh, no, it's so individual. But then I actually thought, no, I do have a format. And I approach the first stage of any coaching, which is usually when someone is just starting to figure out their childcare, as a discovery phase, because I will not give you advice if I don't have a sense of what resources you have around you. And I don't mean necessarily financial, although that's obviously like a huge part of the equation. I mean, like, is your partner supportive of your career? Do they have a greedy job? Do you have a greedy job? Do you have any family who live close by? Are you the first among your friends to have a baby? All of that really contributes to what I ultimately end up advising as like the right plan. And I hate to not be concrete in the advice I give, but I will share with you that when I did the research for my book, the first chapter is the childcare chapter, because just chronologically, it is like when you're going back to work, it's the thing that's primarily on people's minds, right? Who's taking this baby? It was, I think there's 12 chapters in the book. It was the last one I wrote because I was so petrified at the idea of looking at the research and then like prescribing, okay, the right thing to have the best outcomes is to have one parent at home, have a nanny in the home, have a shared nanny, have a daycare center, have an in-home day. Like I didn't want to, like it's different in every geography, but also every family's needs are different. So I was very, very relieved when I looked at this compendium of studies. So it was like a meta-analysis of 15 years worth of hundreds of early childcare outcome studies. And there's like a a PDF document that goes with it that summarizes and each of those situations that I described has some positives and has some negatives, and there's sort of no definitive answer. And then at the very bottom of the document, it goes, but the biggest predictor of your child's outcome in their early child care situation is the parent's emotional comfort with their child care decision.
That's so nice. I was really wondering. Right? I'm like, it has to be something like that, like child's well-being but I like that it's actually the parents' well-being, because if they are emotionally stable and confident and comfortable, that is going to lay the ground for everything. Oh, that's a nice surprise.
But that can be a double-edged sword, because I also don't want anybody listening to think okay, let me just get out my to-do list and now last on the list, I'm going to put be mentally well around my child's childcare. That's not the takeaway. The takeaway is that as you are assessing that, don't
overstress about, is it nanny? Is it I'm hearing you?
Actually think about your own feelings about it. It's not just logistics. It is do you feel more comfortable with the daycare that is closer to your home or the daycare that is closer to your workplace if there were ever an emergency? If you're somebody who leans towards anxious, what actually would make you feel better? That's probably the right place. And it's okay to make decisions based on how you feel, as long as the sort of basic safety needs are met.
All right. So this is going to come back to boundaries. So for someone who is pregnant or newly postpartum and listening today, what is one boundary or mindset shift that could immediately make the season feel a little more sustainable?
The biggest unlock I see people have is when they realize that by being a little bit vulnerable and asking for the flexibility, the accommodation, whatever it is that they need for themselves, it can feel like you're doing it with the highest stakes, which is it's for my baby, it's for me. It feels so solo and kind of self-focused. The truth is, when you ask for anything, you're asking for it for yourself, but you're also asking for it for any colleague of yours who, for one reason or another, can't use their voice to the same degree that you can. And you're asking for it for your employer. Your employer will be a better employer. They will be more profitable if they do a better job of supporting the 70% of the workforce who are caregivers, because then those people will show up. They will be loyal. This is also another unlock. It costs your employer 6 to 9 months of your salary to lose you, or if you make $100,000 or more, it costs 213% of your salary to lose you and replace you. And that doesn't even account for all the time and energy and money put into training you. So if you're asking for this small thing right now, think of it as something that is not just for you. It's actually for your employer too. It's a good business decision for them to support you in it, and make that case.
Ooh, I love that. All right, we're going to, in your mind, listeners, put a little star next to that. Okay, we're going to take one more break. And when we come back, what is one final tip or piece of advice you'd like to offer new and expectant parents? And you can answer this with any of the hats you wear. You are a mom, you're in this world. So chew on that. We'll be right back.
On December 12th, Disney Plus invites you to go behind the scenes with Taylor Swift in an exclusive 6-episode docuseries.
I wanted to give something to the fans that they didn't expect. The only thing left is to close the book.
The end of an era. And don't miss Taylor Swift, The Eras Tour, the final show, featuring for the first time the Tortured Poets Department. Streaming December 12th, only on Disney Plus.
Okay, so we're back. What is one final tip or piece of advice you'd like to offer new and expectant parents?
The first one is, if you're having any feelings of ambivalence around having somebody take care of your baby who's not you, just know this. Your entire job as a parent is to teach your children to ultimately be independent in the world, and to teach them to give love and receive love. Those are the 3 things that we're meant to do as parents. And when I think of what childcare does, it does all 3 things. It teaches them to be separate from you in a way that is safe. It teaches them to be loved by someone and it teaches them to love someone back. And that is a beautiful and wonderful thing. And you are parenting when you are helping your child find a good childcare situation. So that's the first. And then the second is very simple, which is to say, find a local Chamber of Mothers chapter and join it. It is a nonprofit that I co-founded with a bunch of other moms who have businesses that support mothers. And we came together in 2021 and we push for federal advocacy. We advocate at a federal level and at a local level for paid family and medical leave, affordable, accessible childcare, and vastly improved maternal health outcomes. And being a part of a chapter gives you an immediate community to lean on of other moms who are it's nonpartisan. So it is like it's really the things that we all have in common that we all want as mothers. So it gives you that community, and it also helps you realize that at this moment in life, you may only have a tiny bit of capacity to do some advocacy, but for a lot of parents, it is lit up this feeling of needing to nurture, needing to make a better world for this child to be in. And this is one way to really, really feel like you're accomplishing that. So join a Chamber of Mothers chapter.
Do you, or can you send me the link for that so I can put it in our show notes? Because I want to make it as easy as possible for someone listening. I want to do that. Yes, here's the way to do so. Thank you.
Absolutely. We have a link to all of our chapters.
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay. So where can people find your work?
Oh, so you can find me on LinkedIn. It's just my full name, Lauren Smith Brody. Or on Instagram, I am at the Fifth Trimester, all spelled out. There's a couple other people who are kind of using similar names, but I'm the original. I've got the blue check, and it's the words spelled out, the Fifth Trimester. And message me. I would love to hear from you.
How are others using that? Are they doing 5 T, T8?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I have the trademark, so it's ultimately
it's yours.
Mine. Yeah.
And it should be.
But I also back to the language thing. I'm glad people are acknowledging it as a thing. I want it to end up in the dictionary. That's the whole goal.
Well, you have done such amazing work, and I'm so happy to have a chance to chat with you again. I know the return to work is so stressful for folks. So thank you for the work you've done. Thank you for giving tools and tips and really things to think about for those either in this period right now or heading into it at some point or supporting someone going through it. So thank you.
Right back at you. You get people at their most vulnerable and I think most eager to accept care. They're caring for someone else and they need your care. And thank you for giving it.
Oh, thanks, Lauren.
This has been an episode of Yoga, Birth, Babies, produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. You can catch us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Periscope. I'm Deb Flaschenberg. Thanks for listening.